The moment a sleek black Bentley glided into the sunlit parking lot of Precision Auto Works, Clarissa Whitman thought it would be just another quick stop, until her 8-year-old daughter shattered everything with a single word. "Daddy!" Mia cried, sprinting toward the daddy. Mechanic bent over a red Lexus. The entire garage went still. Ethan Walker looked up slowly, his eyes locking onto Clarissa's with a mix of disbelief and recognition. 9 years had passed since their brief, unfinished chapter, and now it had returned with the force of a forgotten storm. Clarissa's pulse raced. She reached for Mia, whispering apologies, claiming it was a mistake. But Mia shook her head with innocent certainty. "That's the man in the picture you keep in your drawer, Mommy." Ethan stood frozen, his oil-stained hands clutching a rag, while his own 9-year-old son, Noah, stared from the corner equally confused, equally impacted. Clarissa and Ethan were pulled into a private office, hearts pounding, and words trembling, until the truth finally surfaced. Mia was Ethan's daughter. A daughter he never knew existed. Clarissa had her reasons. Ethan had been married, then disappeared. But now, face to face after all these years, there was no turning back. 2 children. 1 secret. And a reunion neither expected. One that would upend not only their pasts, but everything about their futures. Clarissa Whitman had always lived her life with calculated precision. As the CEO of a luxury real estate firm in Manhattan, everything from her wardrobe to her appointments followed a meticulously arranged plan. But the day she ran into Ethan Walker at a garage, with their daughter Mia, calling him daddy, nothing in her perfectly structured world could prepare her for what came next. That spontaneous moment unraveled nearly a decade of secrecy and set in motion a complicated, emotional journey of reconnection, forgiveness, and unexpected family. 9 years earlier, Clarissa and Ethan had shared a passionate weekend at a design conference in Chicago. At the time, Ethan was a married automotive engineer, expecting his first child, something Clarissa didn't know until later. When she discovered she was pregnant, she tried to reach him, only to find he had resigned, moved cities, and seemingly vanished. So she raised Mia alone, building her empire while quietly tucking away any trace of Ethan except for one photo, hidden in a drawer, that Mia would one day discover. Now, inside a cramped office at the garage, Clarissa and Ethan sat across from each other, stunned. Ethan's hands were rougher, his features more defined, marked by time and hardship. He explained how his wife had passed away in a car accident 2 years after Mia's conception. He'd left his engineering job to raise their son, Noah, alone. When Clarissa revealed that Mia was his daughter, the look on Ethan's face turned from confusion to heartbreak. "I want to know her," he said firmly. "I want to be part of her life." Clarissa wasn't sure what scared her more, Ethan stepping in after all this time, or the possibility that she and Mia might want him to stay. What followed was a slow, uneasy blending of 2 very different lives. Mia, wide-eyed and curious, was thrilled to spend time with her new father, and fascinated by his world of engines and tools. Noah, however, watched from the sidelines, wary and protective. His father had always been his anchor. And now this cheerful girl threatened to disrupt that balance. At one family dinner, when the truth was revealed, that Mia was his half-sister, Noah exploded. "You had another kid, and didn't tell me?" he cried. "Do you love her more because she's rich?" The pain in his voice was raw. He stormed out, leaving both Ethan and Clarissa shaken. Over the next few weeks, Ethan worked tirelessly to reassure Noah that love wasn't a finite resource. "Having Mia doesn't mean I love you any less," he said as they worked on a science project together. "It just means we're growing our family, not replacing it." Meanwhile, Clarissa struggled with her own inner conflict. Her polished world didn't have room for grease-stained overalls or spontaneous garage visits. When she found Mia helping Ethan under a hood, her discomfort spilled over. "This isn't what we agreed on," she said coldly. Ethan bristled. "She enjoyed it. Are you afraid she'll end up like me instead of you?" The words stung, exposing a class divide that neither had dared speak of aloud. But it was Noah who began to change things. One day, he stood up for Mia at school when a classmate mocked her for having a mechanic dad. "He's not just a mechanic," Noah said. "He's a mechanical engineer with patents. He could fix your dad's car with his eyes closed." That moment, simple, fierce, and loyal, shifted something in both siblings. They began to bond, sharing robot kits and science experiments, learning each other's worlds. Soon after, the children partnered on a science fair project. An environmentally friendly engine model. Their teamwork drew Ethan and Clarissa closer again. Late-night design tweaks, shared dinners, and quiet laughter returned. One night, after the kids went to bed, Clarissa looked at Ethan and whispered, "I never thought my life would turn out like this." Ethan smiled. "Sometimes the best plans are the ones we never made." Then came the turning point. Mia had a sudden allergic reaction at school. Clarissa was across town in a crucial meeting. Panicked, she called Ethan, who dropped everything and rushed to the school, getting Mia to the hospital just in time. When Clarissa arrived, breathless and terrified, she found her daughter safe resting against Ethan's chest as he read from Adolescence Mechanics magazine. That night, after Mia had been discharged, Clarissa looked at Ethan with eyes full of gratitude and something deeper. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to thank me for being there for my daughter," he replied. And with those words, the walls between them finally crumbled. After the allergic reaction that nearly took Mia's life, Clarissa Whitman could no longer deny one simple truth: Ethan Walker was not just part of their past. He was part of their future. The man she once saw as a momentary detour had become a pillar in her daughter's life and, more unexpectedly, in her own. Yet despite the deepening connection between them, the real work had only begun. Their children, Mia and Noah, were finally warming to one another after weeks of tension and confusion. Noah, though initially hostile and protective of his father, began to soften more. He saw Mia not as an intruder, but as a kindred spirit. Her quick mind and fascination with all things mechanical made her less of a rival and more of a companion. Their science fair project had built a bridge between them, one made of gears, glue, and laughter. That project also brought Clarissa and Ethan closer than either expected. Sitting at the same table, helping the children with calculations and presentations, the lines between past and present blurred. Their conversations became easier, their silences less uncomfortable. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Clarissa found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in years, as Ethan recounted a story about his failed attempt to repair a vending machine in college. But even as warmth bloomed between them, reality knocked on the door with cold certainty. Ethan received a job offer, a consulting position with a prestigious engineering firm. Impressed by the innovative work he'd supported at the science fair, it was a chance to return to his roots, to gain stability, and to finally provide more than just enough. But it came with the possibility of relocation to another state. At the same time, Clarissa was offered a new role by her board: Global Expansion Director. It was everything she'd worked for, but it required international travel and a demanding schedule. Accepting it would mean being away often and unpredictably. They were both being asked to choose ambition or family. Ethan brought the offer to Clarissa first, his voice calm but conflicted. "It's not just about money," he said. "It's about showing the kids, both of them, that you can chase dreams and still be present." Clarissa understood. But the fear gnawed at her. "And if you leave?" she asked quietly. "What happens to this? To us?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he placed a hand over hers. "Then maybe we figure out how to not leave," he said simply. The situation forced them into deep reflection. Clarissa remembered all the years she had sacrificed moments with Mia to sit at boardroom tables. Birthdays celebrated late, stories missed, questions answered over speakerphone. She had told herself it was all for Mia's future. But what was the point of building a future without being fully present in it? One night, the children made their feelings known in a way no adult conversation could rival. Mia and Noah left a hand-drawn family petition on Clarissa's office desk. It was covered in colorful sketches, stick figures of the four of them holding hands under a house with a big red heart on the roof. Inside were simple but piercing arguments. "We want to stay together. Noah is the best brother. Mia helps me with robots. Please don't make us choose which parent to live with." Clarissa cried for the first time in months. That evening, she and Ethan sat down together in her living room, their kids watching cartoons nearby, unaware they had just changed everything. "I think it's time we redefine success," Clarissa said. "Not by titles or deals closed, but by how we show up for them, and for each other." They made a pact that night. Ethan would accept the job, but only on the condition that he could work remotely, with limited travel. He would keep his garage open as a grounding space, something tangible for him and the kids. Clarissa, in turn, would restructure her executive duties, delegate more, and focus on staying local. No more late-night meetings across the globe when her daughter had a science presentation at school. It wasn't a sacrifice, it was a decision to live intentionally. In the weeks that followed, the changes were small but powerful. Sunday dinners rotated between Ethan's modest apartment and Clarissa's sleek penthouse. Noah learned to play piano in the living room that once echoed with silence. Mia kept a growing collection of spark plugs and robot arms under her bed. Their days became fuller, not just with routines, but with connection. One morning, as Clarissa watched Ethan braid Mia's hair before school, she realized how drastically her life had shifted. Not away from power, but toward purpose. It wasn't about what they had lost, but what they were building together. Despite their progress as a family, Clarissa Whitman and Ethan Walker were about to face their biggest test yet, not from within their relationship, but from the world around them. As much as they had grown closer through co-parenting Mia and building trust, the pressure of outside opinions, judgment, and societal expectations began to close in like an invisible storm. It started with Clarissa's social circle. During a high-profile charity luncheon, a friend of hers, Veronica Blaine, a longtime fixture in Manhattan's elite, raised a champagne glass and asked with innocent cruelty, "So, Clarissa, is it true? You're dating your mechanic?" The laughter that followed wasn't malicious, but it carried a sting. Clarissa had smiled politely, brushing off the question, but inside, a wave of defensiveness surged. Back at home, she couldn't stop thinking about the subtle disdain in Veronica's tone, the way others had nodded in amusement. Ethan, for his part, remained unaware. His world was more grounded, filled with torque wrenches and textbooks, not whispers and brand names. But the lording tension showed in Clarissa's sudden reluctance to talk about him in professional settings, and in how she carefully edited him out of certain conversations. Meanwhile, Ethan was dealing with pressure of his own. His mother, recently returned from staying with extended family, had been polite but cold at their first shared dinner. "You have another child," she said plainly. "With a woman you barely knew. And now she wants you to play happy family? What about Noah? What about everything you've built to protect him?" Ethan was stunned, but not surprised. His mother had seen him through loss and struggle. She had been his rock when his wife died, when he gave up his engineering career to raise Noah alone. But now, her concern felt like a judgment, as if opening his heart again was an act of betrayal. "She's not trying to erase the past," he said firmly. "We're trying to build something new." But even he wasn't sure how to navigate what that looked like when both sides were being pulled in different directions. Then came a deeper conflict: parenting differences. One afternoon, Ethan took Mia to the garage after school, something they'd done several times with Clarissa's hesitant blessing. Mia loved it. She wore her little overalls proudly, identified tools faster than Ethan could name them, and even helped change the oil on a vintage Porsche. She was thriving. But when Clarissa came to pick her up and saw grease on her daughter's cheeks, fingernails, something in her cracked. "This isn't what I agreed to," she said quietly, trying to remain composed. "She's not a junior mechanic, she's a child." Ethan's expression shifted, defensive. "She enjoyed it. She learned something real." "What's the problem?" Clarissa hesitated, then answered with something that had long been brewing in silence. "Because I didn't raise her for this." It was the first time they spoke openly about class, about expectations, about the uncomfortable truth that while they were growing emotionally close, they were still products of two very different worlds. She had dreamed of Mia attending Yale, running boardrooms, living above the city skyline, not below it, covered in oil. "You think she's too good for my world?" Ethan asked, voice low. Clarissa paused. "No," she whispered. "I think she deserves every option." They didn't speak the rest of the night. When Clarissa got home, she poured a glass of wine and stared out over the city, wondering if she was being protective or simply afraid. The truth was, she had never expected her life to intertwine with someone like Ethan. But watching him with Mia, the love in his voice, the patience in his teaching, it wasn't status that made him worthy. It was presence. The next day, she apologized, not with grand words, but by showing up at the garage with coffee and asking Ethan to show her how an engine worked. "If she's going to learn," Clarissa said, smiling slightly, "maybe I should, too." They began, slowly, rebuilding what had cracked. But it was Noah who pushed everything forward again. At school, a classmate mocked Mia, calling her a garage girl. The insult stung. Before Mia could respond, Noah stepped in. Her dad's a mechanical engineer, he said coolly. He has patents. And he could fix your dad's car in 5 minutes. The moment became a turning point. When Mia later called him her hero brother, something in Noah shifted. That night, he let her into his room for the first time, showing her his prized robot kits. You're smart, he muttered. Mia grinned. You're nicer than you look. From that point, their sibling bond began to solidify, forming the emotional foundation Clarissa and Ethan so desperately hoped for. The world might still misunderstand them. Judgments might still come. But in their little family, new roots were taking hold. The shift began with something small. A school science fair. But for Clarissa Whitman, Ethan Walker, it became the catalyst for something far bigger, a new rhythm of family. As Mia and Noah worked side by side on their environmentally friendly engine project, their sibling bond strengthened. The days of suspicion and jealousy gave way to shared curiosity, laughter, and teamwork. Watching them, Clarissa and Ethan were pulled deeper into a life neither of them had planned, but both were slowly choosing. The science fair itself was a triumph. Mia and Noah stood proudly by their model, explaining torque, fuel efficiency, and eco-conscious design to a panel of judges and a crowd of impressed parents. Clarissa watched from the back, heart swelling with pride, while Ethan hovered close by with a hand on each child's shoulder. They looked like a family. Not a broken one stitched together by circumstance, but something real, something earned. After the event, the four of them went for ice cream. It was simple. Ordinary. But Clarissa couldn't remember the last time something had felt so right. That evening, after Mia and Noah had fallen asleep on the couch mid-robot documentary, Ethan and Clarissa sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, the city lights blinking quietly. Beyond the window. I never imagined this, Clarissa admitted. Not in a million years. Ethan smiled. Me either. But I wouldn't change it. There was a softness in the way they looked at each other now. A comfort that only came from walking through the hard things together. But just as they were settling into this fragile new dynamic, life reminded them that nothing stays still for long. 1 week later, Ethan received a call. One of the judges from the fair, an executive at a respected engineering firm, had been so impressed with the children's design and Ethan's background that he offered him a consulting role. The position came with prestige, excellent pay, and the potential for growth. But it also came with strings. Frequent travel and a possible relocation to the company's headquarters out of state. When Ethan told Clarissa, she tried to smile, but he saw the flicker of fear behind her eyes. That's incredible, she said, setting down her wine glass. You deserve this. But, he asked, reading her face. She hesitated. What does it mean for us? The question hung in the air. For once, she wasn't thinking of board meetings or strategy pitches. She was thinking of Mia's bedtime stories. Of Noah finally laughing again. Of Sunday dinners in Ethan's too small apartment, where love overflowed even if the plates didn't match. I haven't accepted yet, Ethan said gently. I wanted to talk to you first. Clarissa nodded, swallowing emotions she hadn't expected. It's your dream. So is this, he replied, glancing toward the sleeping kids. Meanwhile, Clarissa herself was under pressure. Her board had offered her a new international expansion role, prestigious, influential, but it would keep her on flights and in hotel rooms more often than at home. Her assistant warned her gently. The board's watching. Clarissa. They're not sure about all these changes. By changes, he meant Mia's new school schedule. Her calendar suddenly blocked for science fairs, pickup duties, and playdates. The things Clarissa once saw as disruptions had become priorities. Still, the pull of ambition was strong. And so was the fear of losing what she had worked so hard to build. While the adults wrestled with career crossroads and personal fears, the children were watching, listening. One evening, Noah overheard Ethan on the phone discussing a relocation package. His heart sank. He'd only just begun to trust this new reality. He didn't want to lose it now. He ran to Mia's room, eyes wide, voice urgent. They're going to split us up. Mia, always more hopeful, shook her head. We won't let them. So, together, they hatched a plan. They spent 2 nights crafting what they solemnly called a family petition. It was handwritten in crayon and pencil, with heartfelt arguments and colorful stick figure drawings. We are stronger together, Noah wrote. I finally have a sister, Mia added. Please don't make us choose. They left it on Clarissa's desk, where she'd be sure to find it after her next investor call. The next morning, Clarissa sat in stunned silence, rereading the letter as tears welled in her eyes. Ethan, reading over her shoulder, placed a hand gently on her back. "They see it so clearly," he said quietly. "Maybe it's time we do too." That night, over dinner, they talked openly, about dreams, about priorities, about what success really meant. Ethan accepted the consulting role, but negotiated to work primarily remotely from his garage, traveling only once a month. Clarissa declined the international role, instead creating a new position focused on local development and family-forward initiatives. It was still leadership, still power, but finally on her terms. These weren't sacrifices. They were realignments. As their schedules adjusted, so did their lives. Mornings became a symphony of collaboration. Clarissa packing lunches while Ethan braided Mia's hair. Afternoons saw Clarissa at robotics club pickup and Ethan helping Noah with piano. Sunday dinners alternated between their homes, and slowly, the lines blurred. The contrast between Ethan's modest apartment and Clarissa's penthouse became less important than the laughter they shared inside them. One evening, watching the kids build a solar-powered toy car together, Clarissa turned to Ethan. "Do you think we'll ever be ready to move in together?" she asked softly. Ethan smiled. "Maybe. But we've already built the foundation." And she agreed. The real test of what Clarissa Whitman and Ethan Walker had built together came not through conflict or career choices, but in a moment of urgent, unexpected fear. It was a Tuesday afternoon like any other when Clarissa received the call from Mia's school nurse. Her daughter had collapsed in the cafeteria, struggling to breathe. A severe allergic reaction. Something no one had known she had. Panic surged through Clarissa as she sat in gridlocked traffic across the city, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. There was no way she could make it in time. And so, with no hesitation, she dialed the only person she trusted completely with Mia. Ethan. He didn't ask questions. He didn't stall. He just ran. By the time Clarissa reached the hospital 45 minutes later, heart in her throat, Ethan was already there. Mia was safe, recovering in a white-sheeted bed, her tiny hand curled into Ethan's. He sat beside her, reading aloud from a mechanics magazine he'd grabbed in the prostant waiting room, his voice calm and soothing. Clarissa stood in the doorway, frozen by the sight, not just of her daughter alive, but of her being protected so completely by the man she once thought would never be part of their lives. Ethan looked up, his expression steady, but Clarissa could see the fear he had buried beneath his calm. They exchanged no words for a long moment. None were needed. Later that night, when Mia was discharged and tucked safely into bed with her new EpiPen by her side, Clarissa and Ethan sat together in the kitchen. The apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing below. "I don't know what would have happened if you weren't there," Clarissa whispered, staring at her tea. "You don't have to thank me for showing up for my daughter," Ethan said softly. Clarissa looked at him then, truly looked, and something shifted. It wasn't about old attraction or past mistakes. It was about the man who dropped everything without question, who carried their child into safety, who was there when it mattered most. Without overthinking, she reached across the table and took his hand. Then, in the stillness of the moment, she leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't the passionate spark of Chicago. Years ago, it was deeper, quieter. A promise. A beginning. "Stay," she whispered. And he did. In the months that followed, the four of them, Clarissa, Ethan, Mia, and Noah, found their rhythm. Sunday dinners became sacred, alternating between Ethan's warm, cluttered apartment and Clarissa's elegant penthouse. The kids, once strangers, now acted like lifelong siblings. They bickered over who got the last pancake, laughed at shared jokes, and built increasingly complex science projects together. Clarissa began to loosen her grip on perfection. Where once her days were dictated by conference calls and board meetings, now her mornings often included packing lunches while Ethan braided Mia's hair or helping Noah fix the battery on his robot. Evenings were filled with shared stories, spontaneous movie nights, and the comforting chaos of a life no longer lived alone. Jack's mother, once skeptical and protective, found herself drawn in too. Mia's innocent curiosity and genuine affection slowly melted her reservations. She began to share stories of Ethan's childhood, laughing with Mia over old photo albums, offering both children a sense of legacy and connection. Clarissa, in turn, learned to tune out the judgment of others. When a colleague questioned her presence at a school field trip instead of a last-minute investor lunch, Clarissa simply smiled and said, "This matters more." And it did. She could feel the difference in Mia, her confidence blooming, her eyes lighting up whenever Ethan walked into a room. She could see it in Noah, too, his guarded heart opening, one small act of trust at a time. They weren't living together just yet. Both Clarissa and Ethan agreed it was too much too soon for the kids. But their lives were intertwined in every meaningful way. Ethan had accepted his consulting role, but chose to work primarily from his garage office, ensuring he stayed close. Clarissa restructured her work responsibilities, delegating more and prioritizing local commitments. These were not sacrifices. They were choices, intentional, thoughtful steps towards something that felt lasting. The apartment doors they each returned to at night might have been different, but the path between them was now well-worn. A path of after-school pickups, science projects, family dinners, emergency hospital runs, and moments of quiet understanding. One evening, as Clarissa stood by the window watching the city sparkle beneath her, Ethan joined her, coffee in hand. Behind them, the children's laughter echoed from Mia's room. "If someone told me a year ago this would be my life," Clarissa began. "You'd have said they were insane," Ethan finished, grinning. She chuckled. "But now I can't imagine anything else." And neither could he. 6 months after that fateful day in the garage, when Mia had called a stranger daddy and unknowingly unraveled a web of secrets, everything had changed. Clarissa Whitman, once known for her unshakable composure and relentless drive, now found herself planning science projects, arguing over bedtime, and learning the names of torque wrenches. Ethan Walker, the mechanic who used to work quietly in the background of his own life, now stood proudly beside the daughter he never knew he had, and the woman he never thought he'd see again. Their lives had become deeply intertwined, not in some picture-perfect fantasy, but in the real, often messy, incredibly beautiful rhythms of an evolving family. That morning, they were all gathered for Noah's elementary school graduation. Clarissa sat beside Ethan in the auditorium, her hand resting lightly on his, her eyes misty with pride. On stage, Noah, once a boy guarded and unsure, stood confidently as he accepted his award for excellence in science. He scanned the crowd and found them, smiling when he saw Mia wave enthusiastically. Behind that moment were hundreds of smaller victories. The night he let Mia borrow his favorite screwdriver. The day she helped him solder wires for a new robot. The evening, Clarissa and Ethan sat side by side, helping both kids glue cardboard panels and sketch engine designs late into the night. 1,000 tiny pieces that had stitched the four of them together. After the ceremony, as they walked out into the sunshine, Mia bounded ahead with Noah, the two already conspiring about their summer invention camp ideas. Clarissa and Ethan followed behind, side by side, their steps matching naturally. As they reached the parking lot, a woman Clarissa vaguely recognized, a colleague from the firm, approached her. "Is that your family?" she asked, gesturing toward Ethan and the crossed children. Clarissa didn't pause. She didn't hesitate or overthink. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, they are." That one sentence, quiet and sure, felt like the final puzzle piece locking into place. Because that was exactly what they had become. A family not by conventional rules, not by clean lines or carefully laid plans, but by choice. By love. By showing up every single day, even when it was hard. That night, after dinner and games and way too much ice cream, the kids fell asleep sprawled. Across the couch, Noah with a mechanic's book open on his chest. Mia holding a small prototype engine they'd been building together. Clarissa stood on the balcony with Ethan, the city lights glowing below like scattered stars. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, she felt completely at peace. "I used to think family meant blood and structure," she said softly. "That it had to look a certain way. Be a certain way." Ethan glanced down at her, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "And now? Now I think it just means choosing each other. Every day." He smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Then we're doing pretty well." They stood like that for a while, holding on to the quiet, grateful for the chaos that had brought them here. And in the rooms behind them, 2 children slept peacefully, one who had lost a mother too. Soon, another who had long wondered where her father was. Now, they had found something better than answers. They had found each other. This wasn't the life Clarissa had planned. But it was the life that had chosen her. And as she looked toward the future with its inevitable challenges, detours, and surprises. She no longer feared it, because the greatest structures she'd ever helped build weren't skyscrapers or corporate deals. They were trust, forgiveness, belonging. They were the kind of foundations that took time, patience, and vulnerability. And they were unshakable. From a single word, daddy, an entire world was turned upside down. What began as a chance encounter in a mechanic's garage became the beginning of a new family, one built not by design, but by destiny. Clarissa, a powerful CEO who once measured success in contracts and penthouse views, discovered that true fulfillment came not from titles but from bedtime stories, robot kits, and shared Sunday dinners. Ethan, a man who thought his best chapters and were behind him, found new purpose through the daughter he never knew he had and the woman who had never truly left his heart. Mia and Noah, once strangers, became siblings in the truest sense. Not just by blood, but through laughter, teamwork, and the courage to protect each other. In a world that often defines family by rigid rules, this story reminds us that sometimes the strongest families are the ones we choose, the ones we fight to build moment by moment, day by day. Family isn't always formed the way we expect. Sometimes, the most beautiful bonds come from broken pieces rearranged with love. True family is not about perfection, it's about presence, protection, and choosing each other, even when it's hard. If this story moved you, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, or tell us about a moment that redefined family for you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who believes in second chances.